Dear students, I'm going to take the chapter Cell, the Unit of Life, and in this lecture, I'm going to basically talk about what is a cell and the invention of a microscope and discovery of a cell. Okay, so let's begin. What is a cell? The cell is the fundamental, structural, and functional unit of life. What does this structural means? This word structural means that this cell is responsible for forming all the parts of an organism. Okay, the body of an organism is formed from this cell, and it is the functional unit of life. This means that all the basic functions like taking in food, which is nutrition, releasing of energy, respiration, then there comes the digestion and excretion and reproduction and growth. All these things are performed by cell. Okay, and this cell makes up the body of an organism, and also the plants are made up of this tiny particles called cells. Even the wood is made up of these cells. So all these things are composed of large number of cells. And note this point that all organisms start life as a single cell called the egg. Okay, we all the human beings, be it human beings or animals, they all start their life as a single cell. See, we know that female body produces egg and the male body produces sperm. When this sperm meets the egg, a single cell zygote is formed, and this zygote divides and divides, and it divides millions of times, and then the baby is formed inside the mother's womb. Okay, and from here our growth begins. Okay, so now let's talk about invention of microscope and discovery of a cell. So first scientist was Anton von Leeuwenhoek. He was a Dutch scientist, and he made the first simple microscope. Okay, he made the first simple microscope, and in that he used a single biconvex lens. Biconvex lens looks like this. It is broadened from the center and it is tapered from the ends. Okay, and its magnification was 200 times, and he was the first person, note this, he was the first person to observe living microorganism. Basically, he observed bacteria, protozoa, and microscopic organism in pond water. But you just need to remember that he was the first person to observe living microorganism, and his simple microscope looked somewhat like this. This is the lens part. You can just hold this in your hand and put it close to your eyes, and you can easily observe through this. Okay, now then Robert Hooke was the next scientist, and he was an English scientist, and he developed a microscope using two lenses. Okay, in simple microscope only one lens was used, but Robert Hooke, he used two lenses. Why? Because he wanted to see the objects more clearly. So for greater magnification he used two lenses. Okay, and such microscopes were later called compound microscope. Okay, and these compound microscopes are nowadays used daily in general labs. Okay, so what did Robert Hooke do? Okay, so he observed a thin slice of cork. This cork, it is present in the bark. Okay, bark of a tree. Okay, you can easily observe cork cells from there. So when he saw that cork cells under his microscope, he saw box like compartments. Which looked somewhat like this. Okay, and he named them cells because when he saw these box like compartments, it reminded him of the small rooms of monks. Okay, the word cell also means small rooms. Okay, so earlier the word cells used to mean small rooms. So when he saw those boxes, it reminded him of that small rooms, so he named them as cells. Okay, this is a small room, okay, of bricks. So it reminded him of that small room, so he named them this tiny box like compartments as cells. So this was the discovery of Robert Hooke. So generally he observed a slice of cork, and this cork is made up of dead cells, okay. This bark has cells which are dead, okay. So this question may be asked that did Robert Hooke observe living cells or dead cells? So he observed dead cells, okay. Now coming to the next part, compound microscope and electron microscope. So what is a compound microscope? So compound microscope, it uses light to magnify objects. An electron microscope, it uses beam of electrons. Beam of electron means there is a ray of electrons which are falling on the slide which we want to see, okay. So here in compound microscope, the lenses are made up of glass, but in electron microscope it has electromagnetic lenses. So electrons are controlled by magnets, and here the magnification is 2000 times, but in electron microscope the magnification is 2 lakh times. Can you see the difference? Here it magnifies the image a lot, okay. It magnifies, it zooms the image more clearly than compound microscope. And the compound microscope shows less details, but electron microscope, it shows very fine details. I will attach the image shown by compound microscope and electron microscope, okay. So here you can see the image, the first image which shows the image of a cell under a compound microscope, and the second image shows the image of a cell under a electron microscope. Now let's discuss some questions, okay. You may answer these questions. The basic structural and functional unit of life, it's very simple. Which is the correct option? Cell, okay. Who first discovered living microorganism? It is talking about living microorganism. So who was the scientist who discovered living microorganism? It was Anton von Leeuwenhoek, okay. Now Leeuwenhoek was a English scientist, Dutch scientist, Indian, or a French? So we know that he was a Dutch scientist. Robert Hooke observed. What did he observe? He observed cork, okay. Hooke named the tiny compartment as, can you tell the answer? He named the tiny compartments as what? As a cell. Cork cells observed by Hooke they were living, dead animal cells or bacteria. They were dead. He observed dead cells, okay. So thank you so much. Keep coming and keep revising. Just remember this thing, not to take too much stress for your studies. Be kind to yourself, okay, and just keep loving yourself. Thank you so much.